Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mind-bending dystopian thrillers of the 2014's The Maze Runner. Our story kicks off in the most unsettling way possible. Picture this. You wake up in a rusty, creaking elevator that's slowly rising through complete darkness. You can't remember your name, where you came from, or how you got there. That's exactly what happens to our protagonist, Thomas, played by Dylan O'Brien. The elevator, or the box as we'll learn later, is like a metal coffin carrying him toward an unknown fate. When that elevator finally stops and the doors creak open, Thomas finds himself staring up at about 30 teenage boys, all looking down at him like he's some kind of specimen. Welcome to the Glade, folks. A massive, grassy area that's basically become home to these kids who call themselves Gladers. Now, here's where things get really interesting. These boys have created their own little society in what's essentially a prison. You've got Albie, played by Amin, who's the leader and has been there the longest 3 whole years. Then there's Newt, Thomas Brody Sangster, who's Albie's right-hand man and probably the most level-headed guy in the bunch. And we can't forget about Gally, played by Will Poulter, who's basically the antagonist from day one. This guy does not like change, and Thomas represents everything he fears. The glade itself is surrounded by massive stone walls that stretch up toward the sky like ancient monoliths. During the day, you can see these huge openings in the walls, doorways that lead into what the boys call the maze. But here's the kicker. Every single night, those walls move and shift, completely changing the layout of the maze. It's like a giant, deadly Rubik's Cube that resets itself. So what's the deal with this maze? Well, it's not just a puzzle, it's a death trap. Every morning, a select group of the fastest and strongest boys called runners venture into the maze to map it out and search for an exit. They've got to be back before sunset, because when those walls start moving, you do not want to be caught inside. Why? Because that's when the grievers come out to play. These things are absolutely terrifying. Imagine a giant mechanical spider crossed with a scorpion, covered in metal and flesh, with stingers that can drive you completely insane. The grievers patrol the maze at night, and according to the Gladers' rule, nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever survived a night in the maze. Min Ho, played by Ki Hong Lee, is the lead runner, and this guy knows the maze better than anyone. He's been mapping every corridor, every dead end, every shifting wall for years. But here's the frustrating part. Despite all their efforts, despite 3 years of searching, they haven't found a way out. The maze seems infinite, constantly changing, like it's designed to keep them trapped forever. But Thomas? Well, Thomas isn't great at following rules. First, we see what happens when someone gets stung by a griever. Ben, one of the runners, comes back from the maze acting completely psychotic. The griever sting doesn't just hurt, it drives you absolutely mad with hallucinations and violent tendencies. Ben attacks Thomas in a scene that's genuinely terrifying, and the other Gladers are forced to make an impossible decision. They have to banish Ben into the maze at night. There's no cure for the griever sting, and if they let him stay, he'll kill everyone. So they literally push him through the maze doors as the sun sets, knowing full well they're sending him to his death. It's brutal, but it shows us just how desperate their situation really is. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Albie and Minho go into the maze to retrace Ben's steps, trying to figure out what went wrong. But Albie gets stung too, and as the sun starts setting, Minho appears at the maze entrance, dragging an unconscious Albie behind him. They're not going to make it back in time. This is where Thomas makes the decision that defines his character. Despite being explicitly told never to enter the maze, despite knowing that nobody survives a night inside, Thomas runs straight through those closing doors to help his friends. The other Gladers watch in horror as the walls seal shut, trapping all 3 of them inside with the grievers. What happens next is absolutely incredible. Instead of hiding and waiting to die, Thomas uses his head. When the griever comes hunting for them, Thomas doesn't just run, he leads it into a trap. As the maze walls shift and move during the night, Thomas manages to lure the creature into a closing section, crushing it between the massive stone blocks. Think about this for a second. This kid has been in the glade for maybe 2 days, and he's already accomplished something that seasoned runners thought was impossible. He killed a griever. Not only that, but all 3 of them survived the night and returned to the glade the next morning, completely shattering everything the gladers believed about their world. This is where we start to see Thomas's true nature. He's not just brave, he's a problem solver. While everyone else has accepted their fate, Thomas looks at their situation and sees possibilities. He sees solutions where others see only death. The other gladers are absolutely stunned. Some are inspired by Thomas's courage, while others, especially Gally, see him as a dangerous disruptor who's going to get them all killed. Gally believes they had a delicate peace with the grievers stay out of the maze at night, and the creatures leave the glade alone. But Thomas has just shattered that peace. Just when things couldn't get more complicated, the elevator brings up something that's never happened before. A girl, Teresa, played by Kaya Scodelario, arrives unconscious with a note that says she's the last person who will ever be sent to the glade. She's also carrying 2 syringes filled with some kind of serum that can cure griever stings. But here's the really weird part. Teresa recognizes Thomas, even though he has no memory of her. She keeps saying his name in her sleep, and when she finally wakes up, there's this immediate connection between them that nobody can explain. Meanwhile, Thomas and Minho make an incredible discovery. Inside the dead griever that Thomas killed, they find a mechanical device with a number on it. This device corresponds to a specific section of the maze, and suddenly, all those years of mapping start to make sense. The maze isn't just random, it's a code, a puzzle with mechanical components hidden throughout. Using one of Teresa's syringes, they cure Albie of his griever sting. But when Albie recovers, he remembers things, terrible things. He tells Thomas that he remembers him, that Thomas was their favorite. He's terrified of what Thomas might remember about their past. This is where the movie starts peeling back its layers like an onion. Thomas begins having flashes of memory, images of laboratories, scientists in white coats, and a woman's voice saying, "Wick is good." These aren't dreams, they're suppressed memories trying to surface. Desperate to remember his past, Thomas makes an incredibly dangerous decision. He stabs himself with a severed griever stinger, essentially poisoning himself to trigger his memories before using the last antidote syringe. It's a calculated risk that could have killed him, but Thomas is willing to die to learn the truth. And boy, does he learn the truth. In his recovered memories, Thomas sees himself and Teresa as children, working for an organization called WIC, the World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department. They weren't victims of this experiment, they were part of creating it. Armed with this knowledge, Thomas tries to convince the other gladers that they need to escape through the maze, but Gally has had enough. He's convinced that Thomas is going to get them all killed, and he's not entirely wrong. That night, the maze doors stay open, and a swarm of grievers invades the glade. This sequence is absolutely brutal. The creatures tear through their safe haven, killing and dragging away many of the boys, including Albie. It's chaos, destruction, and the end of the only home these kids have known for 3 years. The grievers don't just kill randomly, they seem to be collecting specific people, which adds another layer of horror to the situation. What followed was the film's most intense sequence. The surviving gladers, myself, Teresa, Newt, Minho, Frypan, and several others, charged into the maze with makeshift weapons and desperate hope. Griever screeches echoed through the stone corridors as death pursued us relentlessly. The nighttime maze became a shifting nightmare. Every shadow threatened danger, while walls move around us, creating new passages and sealing escape routes. I led the group through memorized sections, but one wrong turn meant certain death. A bone-chilling roar announced our hunter. a massive griever emerged ahead, its metallic legs clicking against stone like a mechanical spider. Red sensors swept the corridor as I pressed everyone against the wall, holding our breath while this killing machine passed mere feet away. More grievers appeared, seemingly herding us toward a specific destination. We split up, diving through narrow passages and climbing debris. Frypan barely escaped as a stinger smashed where his head had been seconds before. The ultimate challenge came when massive stone blocks rotated around us, creating a deadly obstacle course requiring perfect timing. Finally, we reached a hidden door marked with the same symbols from the mechanical devices we discovered. Using the number sequence we decoded, the door slid open, revealing a sterile laboratory beyond. We'd escaped the maze, but it leads to something even more disturbing. They find themselves in a laboratory filled with dead scientists, computers, and evidence of the massive experiment they've been part of. In a video message, Dr. Ava Page, played by Patricia Clarkson, explains the full scope of what's been happening. The planet is dying, civilization has collapsed, and the gliders represent humanity's last hope for survival. Their immunity to the flare virus makes them invaluable test subjects, and everything they've endured has been in service of finding a cure. But just as they think they're free, Gally appears one last time. He's been stung by a griever and is completely delusional, insisting that they can never truly escape and that leaving the maze will only lead to more suffering. In his madness, he shoots at Thomas, but Chuck, the youngest and most innocent of the gliders, throws himself in front of the bullet. Chuck's death is heartbreaking because he represents the loss of innocence in this story. He was the one kid who still believed in hope, who still thought they could all make it out together. His sacrifice saves Thomas, but costs the group their heart and soul. The movie ends with masked soldiers arriving to rescue the survivors, but Thomas realizes this isn't a rescue, it's an extraction. As their helicopter flies over the maze, we see the full scope of their prison. A massive concrete structure sitting in the middle of an endless desert wasteland. But here's the final twist that sets up the sequels. Dr. Ava Page, who we saw shoot herself in the video message, is actually alive and well. The whole thing was staged. She watches the helicopter approach and calmly states that the experiment has been a success. The survivors are now ready for Phase 2. The Maze Runner isn't just about escaping a physical prison. It's about the realization that sometimes the people trying to save you are the same ones who put you in danger in the first place. Thomas and his friends thought they were fighting for freedom, but they were actually just moving from one experiment to another. And that's The Maze Runner, folks. A film that takes the classic teens trapped in a deadly game premise and elevates it with genuine mystery, emotional stakes, and some seriously disturbing implications about the nature of survival and sacrifice. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more movie breakdowns like this one.